Welcome, and those on the live stream, you're very welcome to the Community Conversations, which is the Council's community engagement programme. And one aspect of the programme is a series of events hosted by local ward councillors. The meetings are used to discuss local issues, not hyper-Pacific's personal issues. If residents like their requests or concerns to be followed up, they will be by their ward councillors, and please do be welcome to liaise with your councillors after the main event has finished, and they will provide contact details. To aid our discussion, we'll try to keep things to a timely manner, and the proceedings tonight will close by 9 o'clock. It is warm. If you are in need of water, there is water at the back, and please do take time to step out if you so need. Be safe. Also, to aid our discussion, we welcome Gabby, our British Sign Language interpreter for the evening, and she will sit at the front and likely do the whole session, although there is only one of her and it is warm, so if she needs to take a break, I hope that will be all right. Please do notify us, though, if you are in need of that BSL service. There will be a closed captions on the live stream, and this meeting will be uploaded with the written notes from the meeting of this community conference on the web page. The fire exits are clearly labelled. There's one behind me to my right and your left, the main doors where you came in, and opposite where those green signs can be seen. We're not expecting scheduled fire alarm tests, so if you hear the alarm, please do evacuate the premises calmly and safely. I'd like to welcome you as the independent chair. My name is Jonathan Haynes, and I'm the team rector of the parish of Mortlake and East Sheen for the Church of England. This is not a religious event, and I'm not here as a rector or a vicar, but merely as an independent chair. Neither is it a party political event. And so I will try to move conversations and comments on if they come too party political in that way. This is a ward event. Questions and answers relating to the ward and the councillors are absolutely appropriate and encouraged this evening. We'll be fielding questions and that the events keep to time. Once we get to the questions and open discussions, please would everybody use the microphone provided that will be taken around by Celine. Please hold it like an ice cream and speak directly into it. Speak a little slower than you might normally and clearly, and then everybody in the room will be able to pick up what you're saying, and those on the live stream too. At 8:10 we'll open our discussions after our main topics. Our topics today are transport. Councillor Hale will lead that. A greener future, led by Councillor Crookdale. And a new era for the High Street will be taken by Councillor Cambridge. And building a safer borough by Councillor Sachs. Before we begin that first theme, can I invite our councillors to introduce themselves? I'd like to start with Councillor Hale.
Good evening, I'm Councillor Hale from Barnes Ward.
Good evening, I'm Fiona Sachs, also Councillor for Barnes Ward and Sanctuary Champion for the Borough.
Hello, I'm Nikki Crookdale, Councillor for Mortlake and Barnes Common.
Thanks for choosing us over Wimbledon. I'm Councillor Julia Cambridge and I represent East Sheen.
Councillor McNulty is on his stand, so we will take his introduction as read when he arrives.
Hello, I am Councillor Margaret Dane for the East Sheen Ward, and I'm the Disability Champion for Richmond upon Thames Borough.
Marvellous. Now we know everybody and we're all here. May I invite Councillor Hale to begin on transport, and we will talk for this for about 10 to 15 minutes.
I'll talk for a couple of minutes and then we'll have a discussion about it.
Yes, absolutely.
I'm not going to yap away.
Yes.
Thank you. So we're fighting very hard in our end of the borough to make sure that we get a fair share, and we've achieved As you know, probably by now, we've got a hell of a lot of money coming into road pavement repairs now over the next few years. Anton and I and local councillors from East Sheen, we've worked very hard to fight our corner to make sure that we're getting a fair share of that, but also a fair distribution within each ward. So not just fair per ward, but fair within wards. And a lot of that will fruition over the next year or two of financial expenditure. You'll start to see that really manifest itself on the roads and pavements, where you'll see us working on different bits, including getting much more going on in Mortlake roads as well. There has been a fair bit of talk about cycling. You've possibly heard of the fact that we had a sorry, I've rehearsed this. We did a lot about cargo bikes, and we had a massive cargo bike fair recently, which was a huge success, and that is hopefully going to be turned into a road show. There's a lot of talk about being able to bring that around now into different areas and onto different greens, hopefully maybe onto Barnes Green, Mortlake Green, etc. But not just there. That really helps people to understand more about what you can buy, what you can access, and what these of them are. And it also brought in a lot to do with helping people learn more about disability and mobility cycling, which we're very proud of, and we want to try and spread that around and get that known more, which obviously links back to those making sure we want to make sure that we get things smoother, more cycle lanes in. I'm aware that in each of the wards there are things about wanting more connective routes in certain areas of town, things like North and South Schwarple Lane, cycle links, youth-friendly cycle links, for example, and we also have a vision that is led by the deputy leaders of the council, which is to do with having a borough-wide cycle loop, a complete cycle loop. What else? Yeah, I don't really want to rabbit on too much.
That's fine.
Get on with hearing what you want to talk about, really.
Thanks very much, Councillor Hale. So tonight is an opportunity to have a conversation. It's not a hustings. The questions are invited, and this is your opportunity to make any comments, observations, and to ask questions that you have about the topics we've just heard about. So I will open up the floor shortly. To really push the independence of the chair, I'm going to do my best, Fiona, Bruce and Dimbleby, and everybody totally neutrally. So if I do know you but refer to you as the person in red, please don't take offence. It also means that it doesn't look like there's any favoritism from the chair if I don't know your name. Be delighted to know your due course, but tonight is not about me. So our roving mics are around, and we also will be inviting comments from the live stream. So, yes. Just wait for the mic to get, that's lovely. Thank you for standing up as well, if you're able.
No problems. Well, can I first check that you're the right person to ask to? So the Lime bikes and other hire bikes, are you able to comment on policies relating to those?
Yeah, any of us can. Yeah, what would you like to know? We all can, but...
Okay. So when you report a missed or discarded Lime bike, what I've found is that you need to do that through an email. And what I have found is that they will require you to provide information that is personal, your name and your email address, beyond the serial number of the bike and the location. I'm not a user of the Lime bikes, because if you ask about their privacy policy, they refer you to terms of services that are about being a user of the Lime bikes. But if I'm just a member of the public reporting a discarded bike, I'm not a user of the service, I'm just a member of the public reporting a discarded bike. And I don't see why I should have to give them personal information. After all, they report to Richmond Council a fly tip. Whilst you make it an option that I can provide personal information, you don't require me to provide personal information in order to make that report. So I went to TfL and they said it wasn't them. And I went to the Mayor of London and they said it was TfL. And then eventually TfL said it was Bristol and the other councils that were allowing the trials that could resolve this issue. So I'm asking you what your point of view is on data privacy with respect to reporting these bikes.
Obviously, everybody has a right, should have the right to choose. It is something that we can feed back in because the contract and the sort of terms are coming up soon for review and renewal. Later this year, there'll be a paper in something in November about what we do in terms of keeping a relationship with Line Bike or whether others will be involved, etc. There was a meeting late last month, which you can look up the minutes of, and the video of is online, which was a specific meeting where they had 4 providers and were basically asking them various questions, including grilling Lime. But I'll certainly feed in your experience. I would say that typically one of the helpful things about having a little bit of detail is that it can get back to you. So we can, it might be that that's what their sort of excuse is, but not that they ever do. Yes, which I've agreed with, which I've agreed with.
Is there a comment from another ward on this?
Some hands on this.
Then I'll go back to the floor. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you, Jonathan. My name's Tim Cashbowl, and since we're on the subject of line bikes, I mean, I had something else to ask, but since we're on the subject of line bikes, can I say that I have written on behalf of the local society a long letter about line bikes. This is last year. The letter did not include was the problems on the towpath. And I suppose that's because we are essentially an East Sheen society rather than the Mortlake and East Sheen society. And we do have some interest in Mortlake, but the towpath just passed me by completely. There are many concerns about line bikes on the towpath and the way that they're used by, well, the problems of not just using them, but as well, sometimes they end up in the river. It is something to be addressed. But anyway, that's not my reason for standing up. I do have another question, but maybe later.
We'll come back to that question. Thank you very much, Tim. Any comment about the bikes on the footpath?
As far as the, one of the main things, although there is support for having, you know, ecologically appropriate transportation within the borough, which is fair enough, there is an overwhelming worry about wherever you park bikes, because wherever you do, if it's on the pavement, if it's inappropriate, it can be quite dangerous for a variety of reasons. You can't lift them, they obstruct, especially working from the idea of being disability champion, people who are unable to navigate around these things, who are unable to get through, even you know, parents with small children trying. This has been ongoing with that, and as they're bringing forward the agreement with them or looking at it, this is again, since they do have some positive things, but these are things that are need to be tweaked, that need to be addressed, that are consistent, that need to go forward with the things. So that's going to be part of what our negotiation with them is the parking of them, because it is dangerous, and there's been some legislation around this recently. So these are being I don't like just being addressed. I mean, they're actually being more or less fought tooth and nail about these things, and that is something I'm very passionate, and we're all very passionate about, is to get that right. It's great to have ecological and you know, net zero kinds of initiatives going on, but if they are harmful or potentially harmful to the populace, then it needs to be mitigated, things, and that is being brought forward by many people within this.
The other councillors want to come in on the line. Councillor Cambridge.
Oh, I wanted to ask Sarah something, but I think think she's had to leave us. She has. Okay, I can follow that up with her.
Thank you. Yes. With the-
Well, I've got quite a loud voice, so... I also want to ask a question later on in the session, but as we're talking about line bikes, very briefly, can the councillors tell us, people may know, how much does line bikes and equivalent companies pay the council in order to be able to operate? So I think that would be a useful piece of information.
I would say, Francis, probably not enough. It's not nearly enough. But what we'll do here is we've got some wonderful support and we can get the exact answer back to you.
Yes, gentleman at the front.
Thank you. So I've got a couple of comments. So first of all, I'd actually question whether line bike is anything to the council, but I'd also point out that if they don't, then neither Amazon delivery drivers or just about anybody else who uses the road. So I'm not sure why there's an expectation that they should be providing money to the council as an ongoing business. What I would say is that I'm aware that Lime have offered money to councils to provide bike parking. And I'm fairly sure, I think I'm correct, that within Parkside, there is no allocated parking anywhere for dogs. And there is precious little parking for bikes in general. I'm happy to be disproved, but I'm fairly sure there is very, very little bike parking within, particularly within Parkside, but actually I think within our wards generally, there is much more demand for parking than we are currently satisfying. So I'd be really interested to hear from councillors what they're actually looking to do for that.
I'm happy to take that, Tim. I'd be really interested to know from you. I know we've spoken about initiatives you'd like to see as parking goes, particularly near public houses and other places, which we did try but weren't successful in because of the narrow, wasn't any footway. But I would be interested where you think it can go. As far as docking stations or whatever, no, they're on Parkside. I did have meetings with the Royal Parks, with people from Richmond Park, where, as you will know, they have got a very big car park. And I went round there, looked at it, said, is there any way that this could be, you know, somewhere where we could have line bikes? And unfortunately, as it went up the chain, it got refused. But yeah, I'd be interested to know where you think the gaps are. I would also just lastly say, TfL, as we know in East Sheen, there's a very big TfL road goes through the heart of the ward. They have put in quite a lot of Sheffield stands or bike stands recently. I've seen them pop up in threes, and that was very, very welcome to see.
Yes, please.
Okay. Sorry. I attended the line bike discussion. And one of the options was discussed was sort of using on-road bays, bays that are currently used for car parking, and just sort of allocating some of these various streets where we know that there's often a lot of line bikes. And that to me to be quite sensible, such a sensible suggestion. The other thing one of the operators said, so Alt, who were one of the ones that potentially are competing to take on the contract, was that they were trying to negotiate some of the big supermarkets so that they could use space in their car parks, which again I thought was a very good suggestion. And one of the other operators were suggesting that they were looking at putting in docking stations that actually recharge their bikes. So then this would reduce the sort of picking the bikes up, having to take them away to charge somewhere else, which again I thought was a very good suggestion. So certainly out of that, the sort of conversations around in the meeting, I thought there was quite a few things that we could look to do.
Councillor Crookdale, thank you. Coming back, yes, Councillor Dane.
Just a quick note, you were talking about the Amazon trucks and lorries, trucks that go through. They are for the road, whereas the pavements where the line bikes were parked are for pedestrians, which is a very, very different kind of a thing. You know, they don't park the trucks in the middle of the road and leave them there, and you have to get around them. But
I'm very
That
sorry.
was just-
Jim,
I'm just
unless
going to
you're
get you the-
using a
That's
microphone,
it.
nobody on air can hear you.
So sorry, I apologise.
Thank you very much. Just comment, please.
I get that well, to be fair, Amazon drivers do park on the pavement. I would defy anybody to refute that. Most delivery drivers park on the pavement or something. And the cost, the council of vehicles parking on the pavement, as you know, is a significant issue for your leader. So if you're, you know, I'm sure we don't need to rehearse the arguments for why line bikes pay. But I think there is a, you know, in terms of locations where parking is needed, we can open the line bike app now and see where they're parked throughout the area. And they are very, very popular in this area. So I think it's, I do think there are opportunities. You know, Bankley, as Councillor Cook has said, the reality is, just as we've done down towards Mortlake Station, it's, you know, finding some car parking spaces prepared to repurpose for bike parking, and then you can take them off the pavement and keep the pavement clear, and you've got safe parking.
And I think the word here is opportunity, as far as the whole concept of e-bikes and e-scooters about. It is about opportunity and taking suggestions at the meeting, so thank you.
I know there's quite a lot of comment on the issue, and it is an important one. I think if time, I don't suggest we return to it, but looking at the time, we must move on to our second theme, which is a greener future. Councillor Crookdale, please.
Thank you. Hello, I'm Nikki Crookdale, the Green Candidate for Mortlake Barnes Common. The Council's climate strategy for 25-30 is about to be approved. The strategy aims to create an environment which is low carbon, sustainable and resilient. It's worth reminding ourselves why we're doing this. This is because data shows that we're facing a climate emergency, and we need to take decisive action now to protect our natural environment and therefore protect us from the impact of this. The economic, social and environmental costs of doing nothing will be devastating. There's also a moral imperative to act because the disadvantaged will be most affected. The strategy is rightly ambitious in key areas of buildings, travel, nature, waste and resilience. However, the bottom line is there isn't sufficient money to tackle these things without significant support from central government and you, our residents. Firstly, 6% of carbon emissions in Richmond come from domestic housing. We need your feedback on how to spend the limited funds in the most impactful way. Do you need more information, guidance or grants to help with retrofitting? Or help sourcing trusted contractors? Or should we invest in training local people to do more retrofitting work? Secondly, 24% of carbon emissions come from transport, which Anton will cover later. Thirdly, we improve the quality and quantity of green spaces to protect the benefits this brings to residents' mental and physical health in the borough. This is particularly relevant in Mortlake, as sports provision is poor. We're currently waiting to hear if the stag that can be used to provide community sports facilities. Today in a public meeting, I was very pleased to hear that AFC no longer expect the secondary school to receive funding, although they are waiting for this to be confirmed by the DFE, making sports facilities likely. In addition, over 800 trees were planted in the last season. We need to know where you would like more. Fourth, we need to tackle our waste problem. The Green Party proposed a budget amendment in March to improve waste and recycling rates. This would save around 300 a year and help achieve climate targets. But without your support, this is unlikely to happen. And fifth, we need to prepare for climate change. A large part of Mortlake Ward borders the Thames. Community Bluescapes are progressing a number of local projects in Mortlake and Barnes to help with flood resilience. But we need your input to decide what to do where. As part of this community conversation, please tell us your view of the most impactful way we can spend the 900,000 in the climate reserve or the remaining 4.5 million in the climate budget. I look forward to listening to your ideas about how we can best work together to achieve these ambitious targets.
Thank you very much, Councillor, and it's good to welcome Councillor Anton McNulty-Howard with us, also to pass on the apologies of Councillors Patterson, Mullim and MacLeod. They're sorry they can't be with us this evening. So opening up, the questions were on the greener future, about your views on the reserves, use and the budget. Gentleman with his hand up there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Alex Starling and I'm a resident here of Mortlake Barnes Common as well. I wanted to ask in a follow-up to that point you just made, are you aware of John Kerry's forecasts back in 2009?
I'm not, no, sorry, please, yeah.
In 2009, he said that the Arctic would be ice-free by the summer of 2013. And just in case anyone had missed it, he was completely wrong. I have a request for you that all that you've allocated to some quite pointless tasks, allocated instead to safety on the streets. My goddaughter was attacked, was accosted a few weeks ago outside the power station here in Mortlake. My wife, my daughters, they are uncomfortable walking the leafy streets of Barnes, Mortlake. I can give you chapter and verse on why we should be grateful for carbon dioxide while we're coming out of an ice age, and how, if you look throughout history, cold is what kills people. And I think, given the somewhat ridiculous forecasts that we are hearing about our future, I think we should be grateful for slightly warmer weather. Until, if you like, the 1976 summer is completely well, that was a much hotter summer than we've had ever since then. So I would ask you, please, to allocate all that money to safety on the streets, which is a local concern, great importance to us all. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
So I'll let you answer and then go to the lady in the black.
Thank you. I'm very sorry to hear that a family member was attacked, and obviously that is definitely something we have worked very hard in Mortlake and Barnes Common to reduce and try and make the place as safe as possible. I think safety is a topic that we are going to be dealing with later, so I don't want to talk too much about safety in this slot, but I definitely want to say that we take safety extremely seriously, and in fact, I think David is still here somewhere. He is our community safety officer, and he has spent the last 3 years doing a sort of task and job in terms of putting together a very, very deep safety plan. It has been very effective. Obviously, sadly, in your family member's case, it didn't stop that attack. Please, I'd like to speak to you later to find out about that, because I wasn't aware of it. In relation to your comments about climate change, obviously, I feel we're just going to have to agree to disagree on this. That's not the way I read the data, and it's not the way I read the evidence. And personally, I support very much putting investment into these policies.
Can I go to the lady in the black? Thank you. Please do wait for the microphone and speak into it. If you gesticulate, that's fine, but try and keep it in there. It comes in and out watching on the live stream.
Whilst I'm sure there is quite a small number of people who have research that suggests that climate change, global warming isn't happening, I have to say the majority of scientists is happening. And certainly if you look around what we've experienced in the last few years, it certainly is. If you ask the people in Valencia last year in the autumn, they would say, yes, it is. This week we've had 2 days of heat waves. Each day of heat wave produces 600 excess deaths in this country alone. There is a real climate emergency, whatever a small number of scientists may say, the way are that it happens, and it is happening. And if we don't address it, we are going to suffer even more.
Can I go to the, yes, please?
Yes, thank you for that. I'd like to express my sorrow as to what happened to your family as well. But in terms of the climate emergency and safety, okay, yes, we'll deal with safety on the streets, but there's also safety in our homes, safety from, okay, we are an extremely vulnerable set of wards here. If we do not take action, the cost of flooding, both personally for you, our residents, also for the council, will be immense. That is why it is an emergency. So that's why we're doing lots of work. Thank you.
I have a question. I will come back to you. Yes, I'll come back to you.
Can I address the gentleman here just for a minute? My name is Paul Giles. I'm a resident. We just said this is not a political meeting, and you stood up and talked about climate change that it doesn't exist. Of course it exists. We voted, don't laugh, we voted a government in a year ago with a clear green agenda. There's no question there's climate change.
Just bring the room back to the question was, it was talking really about council budgets in terms of the reserve and the overall budget. So if I can stick on point, I'm happy to come back to you, Sarah, on that, but yeah, if you can answer the question. Okay, yeah, thanks.
Thank you. I just wanted to respond specifically on the point about flooding. I totally agree that, as I'm an engineer, we should invest in flooding. I don't think it should be something that you're asking us specifically, what do we feel and think? I think that should be something that we're looking at from experts who have done the assessment of what a certain raise would do. But you say we're vulnerable, but we are, behind the flood barrier. So I don't think it has anything to do with climate change or any other sort of change. It's to do with sensible planning. It should just be informed by good analysis.
Can we have then comments from the council or some questions on that planning? Does anyone want to come in on that? Councillor Hale.
Okay, so on the flooding point, along with Councillor Needham-Watts, who is also in the room, I attend a lot of meetings about flooding, including the Thames Tidal Forum Council. It's fair enough to say that we are behind a barrier, but in 2070, that barrier has to be replaced, or at least by then. So, because it will only do so much. And part of the fact that it will only do so much is because we're getting worse flooding in this change, as well as the fact that it needs to be replaced due to its maintenance lifespan. The thing with flooding in our area, yes, we're investing a lot to get things, particularly in the Beverley Brook area at the moment. But throughout London, right out to the estuary, all the way back in, there is going to have to be, and already is being spent, to raise flood defences. Where we are in our part of the bed is a bit of a conflux. If it floods in too much, at the same time as a downstream flood, it builds up a flood right here. This is where we are. So from a flooding point of view, okay, we're behind it, but it's not. I would say it's a bit wrong to just go and say, oh, it's fine, we're behind a barrier.
One moment, I'm going to go to Councillor Cambridge, but we will come back. If you have a response, please do put your hand up so we can get the microphone to you. Councillor Cambridge.
Okay, Alex, I want to say, join with my colleagues, and obviously I'm horrified to hear about what happened in Mortlake. But a wider point, it's not an either or. We can have decent green spaces, flood defences, we can have good quality, and we can also have safe streets. If the streets aren't safe and they're under-resourced, that's a Met issue. That is woeful lack of funding, and I'm sure we'll get onto it later. An investment in the Met Police. So to say that this council should perhaps not be using its grants and everything else to make the air quality better, to make everything safer for us, I'm a bit perplexed. But what I'd like to do is, we have here tonight Our Chair of Environment, Julia Needham-Watson, I'm wondering if Julia has anything, if the Chair will allow.
I'll go to Julia, then the gentleman in blue, and then I'll come back to the man.
Thank you. I was trying to slightly behind this pillar and not get all involved. So I chair the Environment and Sustainability Committee at Richmond Council, and through that role I'm the London member on the Regional Flood and Coastal Committee, and I've been working the whole range of partners on the London Strategic Surface Water work as well. And I think when it comes to flooding, it's worth pointing more than one type. And as Andy has covered a lot of the ground, the barrier protects us from tidal surges. It's also being used to protect us from fluvial river water. When that comes down, they sort of close it off so that central London acts as a sort of takes the water safely through. But as tidal surges become more frequent, that barrier use will change, and it will continue to be used to protect London from tidal surge and less often to protect us from the river type of flooding. So many other risk management authorities and boroughs will be doing more work in this area in a variety of ways. And one of those is dealing with surface water, and we're looking to deal with it more in catchment, a catchment-based approach, which will mean working with other boroughs, working with Thames Water, working with Network Rail. A lot of work going on behind closed doors often, but you will start to hear it from now on to make sure that partnerships can be set up to tackle the problems. I think that the plea from, I think it was Nikki, that tell us about where you think the problems are, is a valid one, because you know your communities, you know where the water pools after heavy rain, you know where it drains away, you know the blocked gullies are, and it's that sort of information at a really hyper-local level that I think the councillors are seeking tonight. I don't want to hijack the meeting, but I just wanted to reassure that there is a lot of partnership work going on, a lot of different methods being used to address the different types of flood that will inevitably, because the climate is changing.
Thank you very much. Gentleman in the blue check shirt, please. Then press.
The previous speaker kindly took over most of what I was going to say, but I would like to address the fact that flooding includes surface water. Sheen Lane vulnerable to Sheen Lane on the way to Mortlake is vulnerable to flooding from surface water, and there are steps which can be taken, which have not been mentioned yet. Front gardens which are being used, paved over for cars. That's an individual citizen activity. And then secondly, green spaces being taken over for all-weather purposes, like in the Borough to happen. So we must be very jealous about the open spaces for various reasons, and also in people covering over land. So surface water is a big risk. As I say, Sheen Lane, the other side, is vulnerable to flooding, but it's not.
I'm going to go back to the gentleman behind you, and then I'll come to the councillors, and then to you in the green shirt.
Okay. I just wanted to thank you for turning the conversation to what this should be, a discussion about the environment, how we can look after the environment. I would just ask the councillors to please be very careful about their language and throwing in carbon dioxide into it and calling that cleaner air and this, that and the other. We must be planning for 70-year, 140-year, 500-year events. We haven't had any of those in recent years for the very reason that they are those more unusual events. So all these discussions, the way it's gone, I would really encourage that. And please spend the money that way, listening to experts, listening to the locals, about mitigation for things about the environment. Sir Alan Rudge said in 2013, if you become a poor country, you can't look after the environment. And I think misspending on CO2 reduction divert money away from the environmental stuff that we should be talking about. So thank you very much to you all.
Thank you. Councillors, anybody want to come? Yes, please. Councillor Sachs.
Yes, thank you for your point about permeable surfaces, actually. I just wanted to say that in Barnes, in my ward in particular, we are looking to make some of our sports grounds permeable with community bluescapes. We have also done a road project in Kitson Road where both the pavement is permeable and the tarmac is permeable with hydro rock underneath to try and mitigate surface water, and also to try and avoid the sewers overflowing, because we don't think of this in the sense that not only is the water going into your house, but actually if too much water flows into it, then the sewers can overflow, which we certainly don't want. So we are actively looking at these sorts of projects.
Thank you. Thank you for waiting. Gentlemen in the grey occurred.
Yes, hello, thank you. My name is Anthony Carriott. Just a couple of points about this surface flooding. One, about a year ago, I did report a number of drains in the roads around where I live as being blocked to the council. There is a way to do that. Unfortunately, I received absolutely no reply, and I don't think anything about them. So maybe the council could be a bit more responsive on that, because obviously you recognise the importance of that. The other thing was, coming back to permeable surfaces, I see a lot of people paving over their front gardens and stuff, and I'm just wondering, does the council actually have the power to stop them from doing that, or to limit the amount that they can do that? And if it does have that power, has it actually used it? Thank you.
Councillors, yes, please. Councillor Cambridge.
Thank you, Anthony. And I think if anybody participated or knew about Clean Sheen the other weekend, Anthony was the person behind it. He doesn't mind me saying. I started, if you can indulge me, in community activism by having a Save Our Gardens group, which was all about this garden grabbing, paving over porous materials and gardeners, and it was something I was passionate about. The council have, unless Julia tells me I'm wrong here, but the council really have very little its and bits to go on this, so no. But I do understand, for instance, and I'm sure we'll get onto it later, the Mortlake Brewery, the Mooga, the multi-use games area, I believe that has to be porous. So we're trying to obviously keep as many surfaces near the river so they can act as drainage.
Going to just check any online comments. No, thank you. Just to the lady in the pink dress as our final question in this section, please.
Hi, I have a question regarding you asking about how the fund should be used. And I appreciate that it's clearly a major issue for the borough. But the other extreme is, we saw last year in parts of East London, wildfires. My question is that something that we need to be thinking about in our borough with Richmond Park and other areas that we have? So it's a question, I don't know, if it is a risk, is there anything that done? And it would be interesting to hear. Thank you.
Yes, please, Councillor Sachs.
The answer is yes, thank you for bringing it up. In my humble opinion, it is a risk. I think we are working, our officers are working closely on looking at aspects of fire safety, stopping people at queues in areas where the vegetation could catch alight. I can come back to you with detail, but the answer is yes, thank you for raising it, and yes, we are looking at it seriously because it is a risk. It is, most definitely.
Thank you for engaging in section 2. We're going to move to section 3 of our themes, a new era for our high streets. Councillor Cambridge.
Thank you. What do you want to see in this new era for our high streets? Demand can give rise to change, and the demand for online shopping, as we all know, certainly has made a difference. Maybe some might say it has added to a lack of variety on our high streets. But despite that, our businesses and our independent high streets are flourishing due to demand, along with the hard work, sacrifice and flexibility of business owners. The UK's towns and centres and high streets are undoubtedly undergoing a transformation. The rise in online shopping, as I've mentioned, offering convenience, competitive pricing, this fundamentally altered our consumer habits. Now, this shift has been exacerbated by the cost of living, putting a squeeze on spending. Vacant shop fronts, this is something people talk about a lot, and I can understand why, because that can really detract from the vibrancy of high streets. But it is encouraging to note that the vacancy in Barnes and East Sheen falls below the London average, which is 10%. So in Barnes, recently in March, it was 7.1, and East Sheen, it was 5.2. And in the case of East Sheen, we're forecasting it might fall again, because in December, East Sheen had the lowest shop vacancy rate in the borough, 2.7. Now, for Mortlake Barnes and East Sheen, we have a strong community spirit and independent character to our shops and businesses. But the path forward could lie in diversification and fostering unique experiences that online platforms can't replicate. And this could be hosting events that encourages people to linger, socialise and rediscover the joy of their street. Barnes and East Sheen put on trails and events. We've recently had the Sheen Art Trail, which was fantastic, and that attracts local people. These senators benefit from Christmas and grants administered by the Economic Development Office. I'm not going to forget Mortlake. They recently had their very successful Mortlake Mashup community event, and that sparked endless ideas for regeneration. Now, Richmond Council Public Realm Improvement Fund has invested in our high streets. Castle Parade in Barnes is set to have some improvements around the Parade and Merthyr Terrace. East Sheen has 2 schemes awaiting funding, which are Milestone Green and the area around the Sheen Lane Centre. So both of these schemes went through consultation and were developed with the input of the community. So I will end there, and please, let's hear your experiences and hopes for our high street. Thank you, Chair.
Hopes for the high street, please, from the floor. No hope for the high street. There's one hope for the high street. Thank you. Please just wait, Richard, for the mic with bated breath.
Just to fill a gap, well, there's a question on this somewhere. Those 2 schemes, I think they were approved in 24. When are they going to be implemented? As I've heard, not till 2026.
So I'll be absolutely thrilled if it's 2026. I mean, obviously, we have to wait for budget. We applied and just missed out, and they're in pipeline, which is very exciting. They are already, Richard, so as soon as that funding comes forward, then they'll be realised. But I think the real success of East Sheen is that we got that far. May I ask you what your concern is?
It is a concern that this part of the borough has not seen funding historically. And therefore I'm surprised that for this funding we have to wait 2 years.
Councillor Dane?
I was just going to say that it is a process that we're going through, and we have gone through the consultation of East Sheen would like for these particular areas, which are, the plans for it and the ideas for it were extracted from consultations with people here, and the plans are really beautiful. So, yes, as far as funding goes, wait on that is not too bad, actually, to tell you the truth. That's considering some places there's years and years. So we are in the loop, and we are up at the top of the list on that as far as that goes. So it is in the pipeline. It is going to happen. It's just a matter of the checks in the mail kind of thing.
Just going to go to Councillor Crookdale, but come back to Councillor Cambridge.
Thank you. I just want to say a little bit about financially, because for a couple of these grants or programmes that are mentioned, Mortlake can't even apply for them at the moment, or certainly the AT criteria doesn't include Mortlake. So I think in terms of fair funding and making sure that each of these areas get a fair the cherry, that is something that we do have to do, and it definitely came out of the Mortlake mashup that there's no reason why our high street shouldn't have planters or hanging baskets or a little bit of investment, just like Barnes and East Sheen. So I think that is something that we will be pursuing.
Go to the floor.
I was very quickly going to add that although we're hoping for those 2 schemes through PRIV funding, we are, as councillors, talking to the Prime Minister particularly about Milestone Green, which of course is the jurisdiction of TfL. So watch this space, but I have the same frustration, but we're going to make it happen very soon.
Going to the floor, lady in the...
Okay, thank you. My name's Francine Bates. I'm chair of Mortlake Community Association. I'm very glad, Julia, you said we weren't going to forget Mortlake, because I think there's a general view, I think many councillors would agree, certainly Anton and Nikki would, that for too long we've neglected Mortlake. But I think that's changing, and that's really, really positive. And Mortlake High Street certainly deserves love and attention, considering it's a high street that had 8 pubs before the road was widened in the 1960s. So look, we want to try and get back to a point where Mortlake is rejuvenated. And on that point, I just wanted to give a plug for the next stage of the Mortlake mashup. We've got a meeting on Saturday, the 5th of July at Mortlake Hall, starting at 11, I believe, and it's an opportunity for us to feed back on the Mortlake mashup that took place in March. There are so many exciting ideas, as Julia's just referred to, but we do need people to come along, look at those ideas that emerge, decide which ones are the priorities for you. Everybody's welcome, including from East Sheen and Barnes. And out of that, we would then hope to develop a steering group and a plan of action to identify where we want to put our energies in terms of projects that are emerging. So look, I think Mortlake is on its way back, and I do hope that you will get involved if you want to be part of the rejuvenation.
Thank you very much for your question. 8 pubs, goodness. Councillor Hale and Sachs, keep me out of those.
Yes, I was just going to say on a positive note, because I know people feel, the funding's never going to come through. The funding has come through for Barnes, for North Barnes, for the Public Realm Investment Fund, around Merthyr Terrace and Castle Nab Parade, which suffered hugely with the closure of Hammersmith Bridge. The funding is coming. I know that can't make Sheen and Mortlake feel better, but it's just a positive note that, it can happen, and we are going to deliver on that. But we won't Mortlake because we bored on you, so.
Councillor Hale.
Yeah, we certainly are fighting, especially, as I said, sort of mentioned earlier when I was talking about really trying to get the equity going on across everywhere and making sure that we restore the balance even within a ward, so the sort of common end to Mortlake end. And, that fight is never ending. Even just last week, had the great news that more paving works have been approved for the Vic Path, so that road's going to get some this financial year. So the fight never stops. We're always doing it, and we're constantly trying to make sure things happen. Just a quick mention on the PRIF funding thing. It's just another thing to remember that not every time we spend money is directly out of your council tax money. It's grants from elsewhere. So the PRIF money is a grant that we applied to as a council, and we got this money in. The money that was spent on Kitson Road and at Bluescapes, 6 odd million quid that DEFRA have given us to projects with. So those sorts of projects, it's so important to be aware of what we actually use your council tax money for and what we're actually getting grant money for, so that we don't have council tax money on that per se, and we can use more of your council tax money, as we are doing by spending 21 million odd on roads, so that we can make things balance, and also making sure that we have to keep in mind, whatever project we do, there's always a bidding process, even within the council. Every year we have to make very tough decisions. We're facing a £7 million hole, as it were, in adult social services and social care that we're going to have to be plugging. So some things have had to be sacrificed, something and postponed. Not everything has been completely wiped off. It just gets pushed back a little bit. We have to weigh up all the time. It's really tough.
Thank you. We have a question. Yes.
I wanted to go back to Julia. My name is Stabula Nicolau. I live in Mortlake. Julia, I wanted to make a point of saying that on the Mortlake side of White Hart Lane now, every shop is occupied. And I've had any comments from people saying how delightful it is to be in that area and what nice shops they are. So we've done really well outside, and they're really nice shops and restaurants and cafes. So that's a real improvement for us. I look forward to more improvements in Mortlake, and I'll be there on Saturday.
Kathy, yes. Just one last, yes, thank you.
Yes, Kathy Sheldon. Julia, no matter what percentage of shops, occupied shops are, unless you've got businesses and shops that people want to use, it doesn't make any difference. I would love to see a decent shoe shop in Sheen instead of a trail into Kingston. And I'm sure there's a lot of other shops that local people would like to have. We have lots of estate agents, coffee shops, and in fact we have a friend who says that Sheen is the coffee shop capital of southwest London, and you can't get anything after 5 o'clock.
You can certainly comment, yeah.
I totally agree. These are good businesses, and these are people who work hard. The people who supply coffee and the cake, the people that do the nails, the barbers. Those are 3 businesses which we have in abundance, run by very hard-working people. It's sort of sad things. The council, they can't, demand different changes or uses. Leases and rents are going up, and these are the businesses that are finding a home on our high street. But I do agree with you. I would love, was it Johnson's Shoes? Yeah, I would love Johnson's Shoes, where I used to get my daughter's school shoes from. Wouldn't it be wonderful?
I'm going to leave that. There will be more time in the open discussion following, but our fourth theme of this evening, and if I can remind councillors to just speak for 2 minutes, Councillor Sachs.
I'll do my best. It may be 2 minutes and 12 seconds. Okay. Making Richmond safe is our top priority. Everyone should feel safe at home, on our streets, in our parks. I'm pleased to share that crime has fallen across our 3 wards when you compare July 24 to June 25 with the previous 12 months. Barnes is down by 21.4%, Mortlake and Barnes Common by 2.9%, East Sheen by 7.5%, and they are the very latest figures. But we cannot be complacent. Violence against the person, theft and vehicle offences are still the top crime types in all 3 wards, and every crime matters. And our budget, there's been a small crime increase of 2.6% borough-wide, with 61.5 offences per 1,000 people. But that is still the lowest crime rate in London, and Richmond's Community Partnership's bold aspiration is to be London's safest borough. So, Richmond's community safety plan's top priorities are currently tackling violence, burglary, drug crime, theft, motor vehicle offences and ASB. Preventing violence against women and girls, VARG. Preventing offending and reducing reoffending. Combating hate crime, children and young people safe, and raising awareness of water and fire safety, which is where we cross over with the environment. The Council is investing in community safety through the following. Our problem-solving local safety officers, including David Noakes, who I think is still in the room here tonight. The Safe Space at Richmond Station, open Saturday evenings 8 till 11, providing a safe place for people to go. Having a dedicated VARG officer, and a serious violence officer funded by the Mayor's Office. Upgrading our borough CCTV. VARG events like our White Ribbon Walks, the next one's July the 12th, and stalls at local events like Rugby, Richmond Fair, etc. And a women's drop-in hub at the Vineyard in Richmond. We have a Safe Havens pilot in Barnes. Local businesses are providing a temporary safe place for anyone who needs it, and will have signs in their windows. We have free active bystander training, plus secondary school early intervention products, tackling misogyny and violence against women and girls. We have crime prevention support, bike marking, and free home security checks. But we want to hear what you feel needs to be done to keep your community safer. That's why we're here tonight. That's why we're running a community safety survey, which is open until the 31st of July. Please share your views with us online on the consultations page on the council site. Met Engage has also just been launched by the Met, which is live across London, and you can receive email updates and also engage with the Met on what they're doing in your local area. It's only together we can keep Richmond safe, and we're here tonight to listen to you. Thank you.
Yes, gentleman in the t-shirt.
Thank you very much. And you appreciate I mentioned this earlier in my previous question, so coming back to that specific point. Wonderful that there are all these names and acronyms. How many of those people are going to be actually on the streets being to make my wife, my daughters, my goddaughter, their friends, my friends, make them not only feel safer, but be safe? People on the street. Now, I fully understand that it's the Met's job to do this, that, and the other. But if we're spending our money on people behind desks and committees and stands to say, well, look, you can make it safer by doing this. That's not safety. That's not making the place safer. That is making people more afraid and is not tackling the issue. You mentioned tackling misogyny. Now, that's all very well, but perhaps actually there's a problem that men are not getting stuck in and actually defending people that are getting attacked. So I think I'd like to come to that specific question. How many of those people are actually going to be, if you like, boots on the ground, patrolling the streets, making things safer? Because there's nothing stopping us as a borough investing in that and showing up the Met for what they should be doing.
Thank you for your question, Councillor.
Okay. The boots on the ground are the responsibility of the Met, but I do think the council is doing useful initiatives. The safe space at Richmond is there. There are people there. The Barnes Safe Haven pilot is precisely there, and we hope to roll it across the rest of our wards, is precisely there so someone like your and mine, when they feel vulnerable, can go in and be provided with a safe place, provided with a tone where they can call for help and be in a safe environment. So that's one thing. I absolutely get that we all want more police on the streets, and we as local councillors are continually campaigning for that. We have local police liaison group meetings on a regular basis where residents come in and speak to their local officers to say what areas they feel vulnerable in, where to set the priorities for that particular ward, and to look at, let's face it, gaps in the service. I'll be honest with you, our police officers are abstracted from this area because we are the safest borough in London. So at times they will be abstracted up to central London. I'm not going to fudge that. But what I would say to everybody is a lot of, I don't know how much, but some crime goes unreported. And unless we, or the residents of this area, report the crimes, we don't get the resources that we need. So my advice to everyone is report.
Thank you. I'm going to go back to the gentleman at the back who's been waiting with his hand on. No, right at the back. Thank you.
Hello, yeah, thank you. My name's Charles Campion. I live in Barnes Ward. I live in the old police station, which probably says it all. 20 years I lived there. I can't recall ever seeing police on the beat or on a bicycle in that time. I've seen police on one occasion. I tried to track them to get there, and they wouldn't stop, even though they clearly had seen me.
I'd like to change the microphone over there, thank you.
I went to an event in the Wetland Centre about a year ago, probably, and they were around. It was fantastic. You know, I'm not criticising any initiatives that people are doing, because you're doing the best that you can, and it's very well communicated and reported back. But there must have been about 30 uniformed police in the centre one night. There were about 4 in the run-up to the building to tell us how to get into the entrance, which we kind of knew. And I wondered why, when there are things like that done, why don't we do it in a much more visible way? You know, because a little bit goes a long way. If people see uniformed presence on the street, in the village, in North Barnes, wherever it might be. It's huge, and those personal connections. This is what the big problem is, and I know the police say it's not efficient. Well, I think communities are telling everyone that it is very efficient because it's those relationships. The other thing, just quickly, about Hammersmith Bridge. Again, you know, it seems to me like a no-brainer that we should be having police bicycles, because that's the only way you can actually go across the bridge. And people in North Barnes particularly are reporting quite a lot of evening concerns from time to time. You know, young teenagers threatening women walking across. There was an incident last week. You know, maybe just play in a playful way, but if you're the woman, it doesn't feel playful. And why don't we see police on bicycles?
Councillor Dane.
Thank you. I think there's a few things here. First of all, it does come from, and it plays out in our crime figure and in how we go forward. And we are lucky enough to have a safe borough, but it's not 100% safe. There still are things that are going on. First of it is a societal, which I think everybody in their own way can work with that. They can challenge, violence, male violence against women and girls. They can challenge those things, and that's something that I think as citizens we can do for that kind of thing. What we're doing, again, like Councillor Sachs was saying, we do have safe spaces, we do have things. Is how we are patrolled may be less visible, although in East Sheen we do have quite a lot of visible police on patrol on a regular basis. But some is we do everything that is possible, and I think that's on a personal level for us to keep safe, alarms and locks and all of those things that we all do on a one-to-one in their own home kind of way to keep ourselves safe. But what I'm interested in here, it is a societal view, which is each individual's responsibility. It is the Met, which are taking a lot of information. I do like that Met new thing that has just been launched. But also, what if police are on patrol? What is it that anyone thinks that could be done more than this? Because I think a lot of these things are being addressed directly in the way that they can do. If there's more police on the street, what is it that they should be doing? It's like these kinds of ideas are ideas. It doesn't mean they're going to be policy, but they're ideas that can be explored.
Whilst we let that settle, I'm just going to go to Councillor Hale.
Hi, right. Thanks. So, I'll start with the event that was at the Wetlands Centre, and then I'll address a couple of things. I'm really proud that happened there. We really pushed hard to make sure that the Met did their event in our end of the borough and right down in our end. So we're very pleased. It was a one-off event as part of their nationwide series of consultations, following on from what we all know was a whole load of disgraces that came out of the Met and how they were behaving. But it was about to rebuild, but we got that into the Wetlands Centre. Along with the fact that we also fought and successfully got bikes for our local officers and who are using themselves around, and they want to be in areas where they need to patrol more, which this bike situation helps. But what also helps that is when you do come along to things like PLGs, they do listen and they do heightened patrols. We know about the Hammersmith Bridge. Obviously, we get our inboxes, particularly myself, Fiona and Margie. We have had the patrols increased up there, and they are continuing to do that at specific timings where we know that things are happening more often. So you might not see them all the time, but it's about targeting what little resource we have at the moment. If we had more resource, then great, we'd be able to get more timing. So the point about the sort of how we get that resource, the problem is the Met is statistically driven. If you don't focus, they don't know about it, therefore that statistic isn't there. And unfortunately, in our borough, although we know there is more crime than the Met think there is, it's because so much doesn't get reported. And I know empathy towards, oh, we ring 999 but they don't come or whatever. I know there is that. But even if, I'm not excusing them not coming by this, but just to make a specific point, but even if they didn't come, the fact is that it would have been reported. And the Met police chiefs at the top end of the spectrum decisions in central London would then have data in front of them going, well, actually, no, it's not as safe as we thought. It's, you know, they look at all of the different London boroughs and compare us to some horrific numbers in other places. The other thing about allergies is that we do have 3 specific target areas of what we're going to tackle in each ward, which are one is chosen by the police, 2 is chosen by the members of the public there present. So again, do come on to those PLGs to help speak directly with the police and help them know where they need to focus the resource that they currently do. And then the only other thing I was just going to quickly mention is that there was a comment made, I think it was the gentleman in the middle, about not seeing men particularly really helping step in. Well, that's a massive part of what the Violence Against Women and Girls campaign really is. There's a lot of free bystander training, a lot of effort, increasingly so, to try and get through to men and boys. Massive amounts of programming going on in schools, loads of it, of all kinds across the borough, to really educate and try and cultivate society tomorrow, as it were, through teaching young boys in schools and elsewhere, and then wider trying to reach out to men.
Councillor Introductions.
Thanks. I just wanted to give another actually to the Mortlake report back, because if you want to meet one of the Safer Neighbourhood teams, or at least the Mortlake one, I think we're going to have at least 2 representatives from those teams they call on Saturday for the report back. And they also come to our community hub when they're able on a Wednesday, 12 till 3. So that is a place where you can catch up with them in person. But part of the reason why we don't see them around very often is because they're not based in the ward. And we've made this point a number of times. They're based up in the far reaches of Castle now. And obviously that really isn't very helpful in Mortlake. So certainly we have been working quite hard to try and change this and their location, at least have a base somewhere in the ward so that they can be seen. I'm pleased that Andy raised, and a few other councillors actually raised the piece. I want to give them a plug, but also the Safer Neighbourhood Board, which is the organisation that sort of sits up above all the PLGs and feeds into sort of borough concerns. They also meet regularly in York House. So if you want to escalate any concerns that you're seeing at a local level, you can attend those Safer Neighbourhood Boards, and they do a Q&A session. And we're very, very keen. I'm a member now of the SNB, very keen to hear from residents who want to raise those issues. And finally, I'd just like to address, I think it was actually the first question, a bit about the causes of crime, because what we've spoken a lot about is the being put in place because we have crime. But of course, a lot of the crimes in our borough are exacerbated, and particularly actually in Mortlake, by drugs and mental health issues. So the other thing we really have to make sure we do is that we very holistically increase and very effectively do multi-agency working. So this is with housing, adult social services, it's with children's services, and it's the NHS, to make sure that we provide what people need, so they don't end up committing criminal activity. So things like more supported housing, better help with mental health issues, access to look ahead, floating support workers, access to respite care, all these things will also help really reduce crime. Thank you.
Thank you. We have run over time in this one. I'm going to keep on it though, because it's an open discussion and useful. We've got 2 questions. One at the front, please, here, Mr. Catchwell, and then we're going back, and then I'll let Councillor Sachs come in, and if Councillor Phantom as well. That's great.
Thank you, Jonathan. Still on of the police and security, etc. There's been no mention of Richmond Park and what's happening there, and I'd be interested to know what success, if any, the council has had in negotiating with the Met and with politicians as to how we can get Richmond Park policed in the future.
Can I come to the question, and we'll deal with both answers in a moment. So there's Richmond Park and the policing. Sir, yes.
Thank you. That was a really helpful conversation, and I appreciate all the points made. I'd just like to point out that a lot of the boots on the ground, the people that, the community guys have been brilliant. For example, our personal experience was very good in that incident. However, there is an opportunity there to actually show up the Met and challenge them and poke them into action, because they ended up doing the looking after afterwards and spending policing time essentially counselling and effectively not keeping anyone else safe. And that is where your money should be going, not on more boots on right behind desks, like boots on the streets, to enable the Met to be freed up. And if we are having them abstracted, we should be finding a way, and I urge that you guys as councillors to find a way of doing that, to put people on the street, to make the streets safer and stop these things happening. Prevent, it's a bit of a politically loaded word, we're not doing politics today, but forget the politics, the real meaning of the word is prevent. And a final point, language today was a little bit about things that we can do. And I just challenge you again, it's a bit of too much of a step if once you start telling girls, well, don't dress like this and make sure you lock them. No, I'm saying, I didn't say you said it, but can you see how direction of travel is not the right, so you agree with me. So the point is, let's make sure that we're making the streets safe, not doing away with unsavoury incidents by making people hide from them. Thank you very much for your
Thank you for your two questions. I'm going to get each councillor will respond to both of these questions in part or in both. That's about Richmond Park policing and aftercare and enabling easing of time from the Met. Because it hasn't spoken yet tonight, I'm going to go first to McNulty Howard.
Thank you. Three things, if I may. In respect to Richmond Park, police were taken away. There was a point at the time that the police would be reassigned to beat officer positions, if I understood it correctly. And I know that Gareth, our leader of the council, is on the GLA, and I will be pressing that. He's also a trustee of Richmond Park, and he wants to know those police officers have gone, and we will be chasing that up. In respect to some of the things that happened in the past years, we found it useful that if there's a high proportion of crime, we bring in CCTV to observe who's doing it. There are problems about CCTV, but we have found that locally it's been beneficial in reducing incidences in particular locations. We can try that again. I'm due on Monday to go to York House and discuss put CCTVs in, I think it's Victoria Road or Victoria Path. So we'll be pursuing that again for the future. And also I think is in the process of looking at CCTV provision throughout the borough where it's going to be necessary on occasion. And the other thing is, bear in mind that the Met Police Commissioner now lives in our borough and he must think it's safe in some respects. But there is a huge issue of police not being able to do all the beat time that they possibly could because of big demonstrations up in London, etc. And safer areas get depleted most quickly, and that's something you have to keep our eyes on.
Thank you. Moving ward, so Councillor Cambridge.
Thanks. Well, Councillor McNulty Howard's kind of talked a bit about it. We ran a very large campaign about the cuts to the park police. This is a 10-person unit that covered Richmond Park and Bushy Pump, 7 in the morning till 11 p.m. at night. And part of those 460 million, I think it was, cuts that the Met were having to make, that means that that unit is being disbanded. Now, this is going to put more pressure on our local police because they are not only at the end of this year expected to walk the beat and everything else in their own areas, but they're supposed to cover a park, if we're talking about Richmond Park, which you can fit 8 hawks in, which has 5 million visitors a year. So this is why we ran a large campaign. We're completely alarmed about this. But Councillor McNulty Howard is quite right. We're looking to leadership. The MP is very involved. just to say, let's not lose these police. Let's absorb them if they want to stay in this area. And my very last comment is to Alex. The council does invest. It invests in a community crime partnership, of which David Noakes and all his colleagues are part of that. They are situated within the council. They can't go out and, give out, penalties to people. They're not Met Police. But what they are there is to underpin the Met Police, of which, as we've said, they've just had to cut the entire Bushey and Richmond Park's police. They are woefully underfunded. So some of that anger, which I share with you, is at the chronic funding over decades of the Met Police.
Councillor Sachs.
Yes, I'll just pick up on a couple of things. I won't go back on Richmond Park. The leader is working very hard on that. I think somebody talked about not seeing enough police officers on the beat enough. They do come out. I mean, I do go out with them. I agree, it's not enough. But we as councillors are constantly lobbying to see more police off beat. We do also have a police car in Barnes. It does exist. Come to Stillingfleet Road and you will see it. Councillors also lobbied hard for that. I echo what Councillor Crookday and what Councillor Cambridge have said in terms of a multi-agency approach to tackle problems. Part of the reason Barnes crime is down by over 20% is because of the hard work of our community safety officers like David Noakes stepping in with the police to overcome drug offences and antisocial behaviour that came out of that. So we do work hard together with other agencies. I take your point about trying to free the police officers up to do the thing that they need to do. So we are working hard. We do try and hold them to account. And I would say to anyone in my ward, I get a lot of email traffic about crime. Every time email, I am in touch with our Safer Neighbourhood team, and they do respond. So please get in touch with me. Thank you.
Three councillors have had the opportunity to respond. Just a moment for that, and then I'm going to go back out to the floor, please. Thank you. Yes.
Well, directly germane to what we're talking about is not something different. Hi, I'm Councillor Nancy Baldwin. I'm also one of Sarah Olney's aides, and we're actually going to go see the CCTV control room and talk about how we can deploy the CCTV better throughout the Richmond Park constituency. We're doing that tomorrow, and that was set up by our ward councillors. So I want you to know that it's not just here, but there's also going to be parliamentary input into this as well, because we don't have enough police. And I'm sorry I hijacked, but I didn't want to get away from the CCTV thing. And I'm going to give this to...
I was keeping with them. I'm just going to say that we've had a few responses to that. We'll keep on it, and please do, councillors, come in. But we're going to add another question into the mix. Gentleman at the back with his hand up for a while. Thank you for your patience.
Sorry, me again, but it was just a totally different point, which I discovered fairly recently at Barnes, that there are residents in certain streets who are now employing private security firms to patrol, which I found a bit disturbing myself, but I just wondered if you knew about that and what their role and powers are and how they liaise with the police. I mean, I just found it rather disturbing and quite, again, an indictment of where we're at with policing.
Councillor Sachs.
Yes, thank you for that question, and it's very pertinent and timely. Personally, I'm not a huge fan. They have been in touch with the police. We are looking at exactly what they are doing. I would say that last year when we had muggings, very close to my house actually, with the son of a friend of mine, they were nowhere to be seen, and the witness was in fact a member of the public who was in the road. I'll rest my case on that. Personally, I wouldn't be spending my money on private security. I think the police are there to do that. These companies do not have the same powers. But it's a free, I understand if people wish to do that, then...
Sorry, if you can keep comments onto the mic. I will come to you, but we won't hear it. It's not that we can't hear it, but we need to make sure everybody hears it. So please do, if you'd like to come in with a comment, sir, thank you. They're all welcome.
Thank you. My apologies.
On the mic. Thanks.
I was just butting in to say that if the services aren't provided, that's why people are doing it. And the question was, what do you think? How are you using this fact to shame the police, to basically use the tools at your disposal as public servants, to challenge them and say, look, you're not doing your job. This is happening here. What are you going to do about it?
Councillor Hale.
We did challenge them. And they made successful arrests. So there was success there. That's all I can say. There was no input from the private security firm at the time.
We've got two responses. Councillor Hale, then Councillor Kirkdyke.
Well, it's a dim view of them, and we don't recommend them, and neither do the police. They're not as effective as people would like to convince us that they are. They don't actually always communicate with the police. They don't always ring through and report stuff and call for the 999 call. We have various examples of that within our own ward. So they're not reliable at their job, not a reliable alternative. So we don't really like to see them, we don't encourage them, and the same goes with the police. We need to engage with the police more in terms of getting reporting through to them so that they can then get the resource up and be able to do the job. It is not for lack of want that they are, Sergeant Hirsch is desperately wanting to do more. He would love to do more. He is so passionate, and so are all of our officers. They really, really want to do it. It's about going up higher than us and lobbying and campaigning, and so I'm not going to get too political on this, but it is ultimately partly an answer of politics at a higher level, as well as reporting. You touched on it earlier, that the importance of what we pay council in terms of employing some people who are behind desks and in meetings. And there's a very, very small number of them. So it's not like there's some army behind the scenes that we're funding. There's a very small, dedicated group that do this multi-agency work and that really have a much higher oversight and influence into how the police can actually target those sort of those specific crimes that you want us to see working on, like the drugs situations, for example.
Thank you. Councillor Kirkdyke.
Thank you. I just wanted to say a little bit about CCTV and lighting and how effective that can be as a deterrent. The council do have the sort of roving CCTV that you can take to hotspot areas, and we have lobbied in the past but to maybe have more of those, just so that we know they do act as a deterrent, and I think it would be useful to probably have more of those working effectively, and maybe some more permanent ones as well in the areas where we know we have hotspots. And in the same light, RHP, the housing provider, along and within their housing estates, it would be very useful if they as well put in more CCTV and lighting. It's another area that we've campaigned and lobbied for. And just coming back to a previous person who mentioned victim support, I was slightly surprised because my previous experience with residents is that the council have signposted residents to services to offer support. And so I apologise, I can't remember, sorry, who mentioned that. So I apologise if that didn't happen. And I would be interested just to chat to you afterwards to try and find that didn't happen, because it certainly has in other cases I've dealt with.
We are way over time on this issue, but the mood of the room seems to be wanting to talk about it, and it is open discussion, and part of that open discussion I feel is able to talk about what we talked about tonight. So I'm just going to give you the opportunity we can come back to this, of course, but there are any other discussions that want to raise. That's great. Yes, gentleman at the back there.
Thanks again. Point I wanted to make, but we ran out of time. Did I understand from Councillor Hale that you're also responsible for, or you were also talking about pavements as well as roads? If so, I've got a question, but I don't want to waste your time if you have.
I'm not personally responsible. I don't sit as the chair of that committee, but we all.
You are all okay. Well,
feeding
okay, then I'll make it quickly.
things.
Yeah, it's just about the horrible asphalt that's being put in place of paving stones in parts of the well, very commonly actually, unfortunately, around the borough, which I don't think adds anything to the look of the borough at all. And I think I'm not the only one I know. I had noticed recently that there have been some cases where in the recent past, asphalt would have been used, now paving stones are used again. And I was wondering if that is a new approach, a new policy or whatever that's going to be used from now on, or if that's just a one-off. If it is only a one-off, that would be unfortunate because I think asphalt does not enhance the look of the borough at all. Thank you.
Okay, well...
I'm going to get Councillor Cambridge and come back to you, if that's right. Thank you.
Yeah, Anthony, I agree with you in part. I mean, obviously it's put on there because it's flexible and stones aren't, and it's just going to last longer and it's going to bend. That's why it's put. It's often very, very dark black when it first goes on, and it doesn't fit in with the amenity, with the street. I mean, it does fade over time. However, I'll be honest, it was being put on in quite a sloppy way, and I think we councillors did kind of take that residents' view forward, and now there's new procedures going to be applied to actually make sure it's a sort of neater job, but it is literally there because it is a flexible material.
I can come back to you, yes, as you have a response, an answer.
Yeah, thanks. I do accept that, Julia, thank you. But I have noticed that as it ages, it does actually crack all over the pavement, and actually then that causes possibly a sort of tripping hazard as well. It's not that flexible.
It's not ideal, but I know from several of the kind of roads and pavements that we've been involved with and have been pushing for, that we've lost a tree last year in that it was a healthy tree, but it was pushing everything up so much that in order to get to the roots, to put paving stones down, it had to be, obviously that was done as part of a consultation with neighbours, people were asked about it, whereas the asphalt, the black tar, it means that the roots don't have to come up and the trees don't have to come up.
The first issue this evening was about transport, and it was all entirely lime bikes. And now I want to be able to put the question that I've been wanting to put for the last 2 hours now. There is a transport strategy being updated, and this hasn't been mentioned at all. But I have looked at the transport strategy website, and I must congratulate the council on doing something about our transport strategy. What concerns me slightly is the method that they've taken, which is for those consulted to pin up responses, and it alarms me slightly that the most number of pin-up responses have been in the Richmond Town Centre, 270 altogether. In East Sheen we have only 120 responses, and there are only just over 50 responses about Hammersmith Bridge, and it worries me that the council might decide, a lot about Richmond Town Centre, some of these other places, Richmond Park, for example, only 4 responses. Oh, well, let's forget about Richard Park. And Smith Bridge, well, maybe it's not so vital as it was 4 or 5 years ago. I'll be very interested to hear if Council has anything to say about that, but more interested to see what the report says when it emerges. Thank you.
I was just going to say, actually, sorry, I was going to speak, but I will. On the Hammersmith Bridge, as a Borough councillor, I can say, with a lot of heart, we have not forgotten, nor has the council forgotten about Hammersmith Bridge. We are waiting for the task force to come back basically with a response. So we're going now on Hammersmith Bridge. Our MP, as you know, has also been lobbying hard for answers. There is a question mark over whether some of the new infrastructure funding is going to be allocated to Hammersmith Bridge. We wait to hear, but it's not that we've forgotten, it's just not in our power, actually, as local councillors, to get the answer at the moment.
Just going to go to a question from the front and then to Councillor Hale.
Thank you. I'm going to follow up on the Hammersmith Bridge thing first, the opposite order question. So, I guess the bridge has been closed for 6 years, closed to most traffic for 6 years, and we heard earlier just how successful Barnes businesses are. So, I'm really slightly worried that we're still hearing from councillors a narrative about how deleterious the absence of motor traffic is to Barnes, when in fact we know from that it hasn't significantly affected emergency services, and we also know from the data that it's making a positive difference to traffic, a very significant positive difference to traffic in Barnes, and it's not having any impact on traffic in the wider area after 6 year change. So this is, I mean, and this is reported data from TfL, and I'm just really worried that we keep going to, oh, Hammersmith Bridge needs to be reopened. Then we talk about climate change, the climate emergency, and we don't seem to be weaving these things together. But the question I wanted to ask actually goes back to the crime question. My question, observation here is, both of my girls cycle to school every day, and pretty much not a week goes by without one or both of them reporting being close past on the way to school. Now this isn't stuff I could make them take cameras on their bikes and then try and report that to the Met every time, but this is them riding through what should be, in theory, quiet roads in the ward, down Vicarage Road, down Hertford Road, down Sheen Common Drive. And I just wonder what councillors think we can do about that, because we're doing a great job with Sheen Mount is getting a school street, it's getting made on the school street, other schools in the areas have been upgraded. Both of my girls go to secondary schools, and I don't feel they're really getting much support with their travel choices.
Thank you. I'll definitely come back on that. I'm very pleased that we're having a new transport strategy. We campaigned very hard for that petition a couple of years ago, asking for it, given the issues in the area. And like you, I'm very keen that we have protected cycling paths, safe walking zones, wider pavements, so that people can safely make the choice to travel actively across the borough. And it does worry me when schemes are put in place. So, we had a lot of 216, for example, the big roundabout up by the Sainsbury's. A lot of money must have been invested in that scheme. And yet, if you're a cycle rider, you're pushed into the traffic before you get to the roundabout. I mean, so it does worry me when things are even now being designed that don't seem to be providing those safe routes. So I would definitely encourage, as many people as possible, which is obviously the place I represent, make comments about how we can get around more easily in that ward.
Hello, I'm afraid I'm not a cyclist and I'm never going to be. And I feel very forgotten, and I feel as if the borough wants to get rid of me driving a car. As you get older, even if you were a cyclist, you're probably going to cycle so much. Yes, you can walk a little way. Sometimes bus and trains can take you so far, but very often you'll need to use a car. And more, now we can't get into Richmond Park, and we shouldn't be stopping, we should still be trying that. You can't park in so many places, and now you're suggesting that some of the car parking places that do exist are taken over for cycles. You can't drive on certain roads at certain times on certain days. It's absolutely confusing. So you can't get around the place unless you're fit and clad in lycra.
Thank you. I'm going to let Councillor Kirkwood come in.
Thank you, Kathy. Thank you. You know, you make a really good point, because if the people who are able to travel actively around the borough more easily, then the people who do need to travel will find it a lot easier to get around. And that's why we need to provide and accommodate for all people in the borough, because I absolutely 100% agree with you that there are people, because of either age or disability, that will always need to use their cars. What I want is for people who want to opt to not use their cars to be able to also travel safely, so that you can get where you need to go much quicker.
Councillor Cambridge.
I agree with both of our recent speakers. I mean, Richmond Park Academy, just as an example, I hope they're going to come into the school street scheme. I'm very proud that East Sheen has 2 school streets now, and they seem to be working, and they're really impacting positively on children's safety, which is a good thing. But in a way, there's kind of a conflict here, because people would say, and I hear a lot, the reason why Hertford Avenue is so bad, the reason why potentially cyclists are, being subject to behaviour which shouldn't happen at all, is because people are using it to rat run. And if you track to Hammersmith Bridge, then some of these behaviours are because of that. So the council have been very, very clear. They do and hope that the 3 options that are being looked at by the task force, one of them includes public transport and blue lights across Hammersmith Bridge. That will at least alleviate things for people in East Sheen. But I think it should be people like Kathy, which I probably am more in that I don't cycle anymore. But I cycled for 15, 20 years, and I feel there is a place for both. And I think they should both be accommodated.
Thank you. Gentleman in black T-shirt.
I'd like to go back to the beginning on transport. In the beginning, cyclists were allowed to, they cycled on the footways in Victorian times. Then a law was brought in which allowed them to ride their bikes on roads, but they had to give up the right to ride on footpaths. Since then, cycling has become very popular, and I quite agree with that. It's a way of travelling. But the trouble is, the people who are suffering, pedestrians. Cycling has become very popular, particularly because of initially perhaps the London Olympics, and subsequently things like cost of living crisis, and generally a sustainable way of travelling. I don't cycle, like the lady who spoke earlier. I use the bus, the Freedom Path, and I walk and use the pavements. And one of the questions one of the topics which was talked about earlier was about safety. And the question is always asked at the liaison committee meetings: do you feel safe on the streets during the day and at night? I often don't feel safe on the streets because cyclists whizzing along. And it's illegal to ride a bike on the pavement unless it's certain designated areas. At the moment, a penalty of £30. But it's never enforced, because when I've raised it at the police liaison committee meetings, they've just simply said we haven't got the resources for that. Then it's just become generally accepted that cyclists can cycle on pavements with no impunity, and the people that suffer. I mean, I've often stepped out of my front gate, and an electric bike, because the electric ones are far more dangerous than ordinary cycles. Much heavier, much faster, just come whizzing straight past me, and I've heard of people sitting at bus stop and a cyclist has ridden over their feet.
Thank you for your question. I'm just going to take another, because I had a hand up at the front. Madam, would you like to come in?
My name is Jun Zhao. I'm also a resident with my family in East Sheen for many years now, and enjoyed it. And I really loved this way of communication. This is our first time, so maybe you have done this for many times now. So please pardon me if I'm being very naive. My questions and everything. What I want to ask is, because I think one of the council members mentioned before that regarding the project for green, and I am always interested in the solar panels to be fitted on roofs, because I think that is a really good thing for, tackle climate change, actually. It would be turning the energy, the solar into power, and we can be self-sufficient to tackle the energy crisis going forward.
Sorry, is there a question in there? Just to
Yeah, the question is, has the council have any? You've got quite a big budget there, up to 5 million green budget. Have you got any plans for educating, or do you bring some sort of like concrete ideas to push this plan through? So, because it can't be a sort of independent thing to do. I think it's good if council can push a very sort of practical.
That's great. That's a lovely. I'm just going to bring you to a scale because we're 1 minute left to take. I'll take a question from the man with his hand up and ask all of our councillors if they can summarise rather.
I'm still only in my 70s, so I cycle everywhere, and I don't have a car, and that means I can't use the dump. If I've got rubbish, I can't get it there. Apparently, if I arrive with my bicycle, I can. Why can't I take my rubbish on foot?
So that we've had some questions about the safety element and greener sustainability and use of the dump. Can we go specifically to the dump question, Councillor Sack?
Yes, on the dump, actually, I get you, and I'll take that back as the answer. As you can't take your rubbish on the bike unless I'm corrected by any of my fellow councillors. So I will take that back to Environment Committee. In terms of solar panels, we are doing a lot of work on solar panels. We have an initiative, Make My House Green. If you look it up on the council's website, you'll see that is there's a grant plus a support for installing solar panels. We're also looking at solar panels on listed buildings and in conservation areas. So work is being done there. In terms of St Hammersmith Bridge, I'll be honest with you, I'm a Barnes councillor. There's a balance to be struck with the bridge. I have always said I want buses for public transport. I also have mobility problems. Not all problems are seen, and we need to have buses going across there for people who cannot walk the length of the bridge. Personally, I also like to see some seating on that bridge, which has just been taken off, and I will campaign.
Thank you, Councillor. Sorry, Councillor Dane.
Yes, in response to the being able to drive and that way again, there are certain things that I take as far as looking at things from like disability kinds of things and various different things. It's like there is not one thing. It's like, we'll do this one thing and it'll all be fixed. It's like, it doesn't work like that, because there are people who can take bicycle, feeds into our ecology and our clean air and things. And then there's the bridge, which also has to do with that. And then there's this. It is a multifaceted kind of approach to it. But it's very when people are digitally excluded. where everybody's on the internet, except this group over here. And I really like to work for the group that is the smaller things, the ones that are having troubles. I really push for digital inclusion. I really push for people who are unable to use these kinds of things, for us to look at more of an aesthetic kind of way of how can we, it's not inclusion, it should be at the point of inception that these things, there will always be cars, but of course, because we still want to push for bikes, we still want to push for walking, we push for public transportation. So it all works together, but that part cannot be forgotten. That part is important because there will always be people that need nothing, and it's really important for me as working with people who are less able or have to have those things to push forward to say this still needs to be in place and it has to be enhanced and it has to be from building of roads and buildings and everything else from the point of inception, as opposed to I'll think about it later and then we'll add kind of a something else on it. But you're right.
I'm going to have to bring you to a stop. Thank you so much. We are, I'm afraid, at time. The conversation doesn't stop here. This is one event in an evening. Your councillors have reminded to please do follow up with them on issues. Also, an audience reminded that residents have a paper feedback form here tonight, and it would be very valued if your thoughts could be put on those and could be completed and left. An email, a post-event email, will be sent to all residents with a link to a feedback form as well, so there's an opportunity there. Thank you for your time this evening and coming out. I'd like to thank Councillors Dane, McNulty, Howard, Councillor Cambridge, Councillor Bay, and Councillor Sachs and Councillor Hale, particularly all the people behind the scenes who have worked on the sound and on the live stream for this evening. It has been illuminating, and thank you for your time. Particular thanks to our British Sign Language interpreter as well. Thank you. For those of you watching online, thank you very much, and good evening and good night. And for you here, thank you. Good night.